Guardian released reports on how Facebook moderates...
Content moderators keep these digital public spaces from the worst the internet.
Its confidential rulebook on sex, violence, and terrorism was recently leaked.
Organization. Facebook, a publisher of content, or is it a platform?
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. Here are some of the media stories we're covering this week. Content. Who decides what you can or cannot see online? We look at Facebook's rules of social engagement and examine the world of the content moderator. Turkish journalism is in a sad state of affairs. You can go to jail for not showing enough remorse. And Trump's travels to the Middle East offer a visual bonanza for amateur comedians online. Facebook is not just a news platform, it's a news story in and of itself. And this past week, the British newspaper The Guardian revealed hundreds of internal documents produced by Facebook, ground rules for the site's content moderators for what is and is not acceptable. From violence to racism, revenge porn to child abuse, the picture that emerges is one of a company struggling with how to cope with more than 1.3 million posts per minute in multiple languages. It's taken until now for Facebook's nearly 2 billion active users to get a look under the hood. Why did it take so long? Perhaps because Facebook does not call itself a media company. It's always considered itself a technology company and therefore not bound by the rules and responsibilities that publishers are. Facebook's product, after all, is not the content in your news feed, none of which it actually produces. It's you, your likes, your shares, your location, your profile. But the site is not beyond the reach of pressure groups and governments for going too far. Like it or not, this is a story about competing interests, the company's financial interests and the public interest. Our starting point this week, Silicon Valley, USA, Facebook's headquarters in Menlo Park, California.
Companies like Facebook are famously very secretive about the specifics of their content moderation rules, partly because they don't want people to game the system. But it's also because it reveals a very ugly underbelly of the social network. It doesn't really fit with Facebook's warm and fuzzy brand image of connecting friends and family.
But these revelations matter because they're the peeks inside the machine we get to try to understand how Facebook is thinking about the decisions they make. And they really propel the conversation forward because this is what we have to go on in the absence of Facebook's transparency into how it makes its decisions.
And what these revelations show for the first time since Facebook's inception in 2005 is the first glimpse at how they have been managing the content that we as users see.
When The Guardian broke its Facebook story, revealing what it called the site's rulebook on sex, terrorism, and violence, the picture that emerged was one of a technology company that has accidentally grown into something else, the world's biggest media platform. A company that is making up the rules as it goes along, recently almost doubling its number of content moderators. And Facebook is doing that while trying to maintain what is and will always be its primary mission, keeping people on the site.
I think they have a very laissez-faire approach. They very much want people to be able to be free to speak their minds, to be open about what they're doing, and be able to publicly share what they want. Because the more you get involved, the more you can be accused of so many things, such as being a censor for the entire world.
They currently have 4,500 moderators, so to add 3,000 more is obviously, almost doubling the resources that they've allocated to this issue. If that many more moderators are warranted, how has the system been functioning? It tells you that they're not ready for prime time, which is really scary because they're in prime time.
And I would argue that it's piecemeal. They have now 7,500 workers who are there apparently moderating content. They're given no more than 10 seconds to look, to make a value judgment about, should this content be seen, should it not be seen? There's 1.9 billion people on Facebook, so how really can 7,500 people manage 1.9 billion people's content?
Boosting its number of content moderators was Facebook's response to an horrific case earlier this month, when a man in Thailand posted a video of himself murdering his young daughter before taking his own life. Like other postings of shootings, rapes, and suicides, that video was deleted, but only after users complained about it. Facebook lacks the capability to scrutinize such material before it hits your news feeds. Facebook's head of global policy management, Monica Bickert, told the Listening Post that keeping people on Facebook safe is the most important thing we do. 2 months ago, the site's so-called newsroom added what it called new suicide prevention tools. However, this is yet another area where Facebook's public pronouncements seem to conflict with its business model. According to the Sydney-based newspaper The Australian, Facebook's algorithms can identify users who are emotionally vulnerable, particularly young ones. And according to that report, Facebook has shared that information with, of all people, its advertisers.
It passed that information on to advertising agencies as a sort of, here's how much we understand about our consumers. And that is the key point here. I think it just shows how much data Facebook has about us. Everything we like, every photo we upload, every comment we make, every person we interact with, and all that data can be harvested and then repackaged and sold to advertisers so that Facebook can make money. So when you use Facebook, you've got to remember that it's not Facebook that is the product. We are the product, and we're being sold to advertisers.
Facebook's response was that they do not do ad targeting based on emotion. That's a very broad statement, and knowing what we do about how Facebook likes to micro-target advertising based on where you are, what you know, and it asks your moods, there's a sense that it's a disingenuous response. And the report was put together by 2 Facebook employees in Australia, and Australia also happens to be the only market where Facebook's ad revenue is declining. So it left people and observers and privacy advocates with more questions than answers.
High quality 360 content.
However, Facebook's lawyers aren't focused on legal issues in Australia these days, or even in the US. They're looking at Europe. Last week, the European Union's antitrust body fined Facebook $122 million for misleading regulators over its 2014 takeover of the messenger service WhatsApp. And the EU has a new data protection law coming into force next year, which allows for fines of up to 4% of any company's total earnings. Such cases could cost Facebook or other tech giants billions. As for Facebook's argument that we are what we say we are, a technology company, rather than what we have become, a media company, that is straight out of the Silicon Valley Handbook.
What's been so interesting is how willing society has been to accept that. They're willing to accept Uber claiming it's not a taxi company, it's a technology business, so they don't have to abide by the rules of a taxi company. They're willing to accept Airbnb with a very similar excuse, so they don't have to abide by the rules that hotels have to abide by. Amongst all of Silicon Valley today, rather than just Facebook. And I think what's going to happen very soon is we're going to have to decide what rules we want these companies to abide by.
Facebook consistently has said that they're a technology company and not a media company. But as more and more of people's transactional and media life takes place on Facebook, you're going to have more and more of these issues come up. Those laws were probably not what Facebook had in mind when they raced to be a community of 2 billion people on the internet, but now they've grown into these problems.
We've seen these kind of second era internet companies grow and grow and grow, and it almost seems like they're unstoppable. If you look at the top 10 largest companies in the world right now, most of them are tech companies, and they're doing it with our information. Certainly in the EU, the showdown is already underway, and I think that the mood might change, and if consumers are really concerned about this, that might be something regulators are willing to look into.
Media companies have to be responsible for all of the content that they publish. That usually means they have to have clear editorial guidelines, and they are quite closely regulated. Technology companies, on the other hand, would say, we're just a platform allowing our users to share the content. We have nothing to do with what content is shared. Being a media company is a massive pain in the ass, so it's understandable why Facebook wouldn't want to accept that responsibility, but it's going to become harder and harder for it to refute that it is, in fact, a media company.
It's great to be here with you today.
Like all companies that start out as technology firms, Facebook is in search of solutions, tweaking its algorithms, its practices, and its news releases accordingly. But with nearly 2 billion users relying on the site for more than mere validation, for information, come certain responsibilities. Facebook is where share values and core journalistic values collide. And until it admits to what it has become, a media company, and all that that implies, Facebook is selling its users and the world they live in short. On the download now, our viewers on Facebook's rules, regulations, and practices.
The leaked Facebook moderation documents reveal what we knew already took place, but in unprecedented detail. They show that Facebook is having a hard time moderating between the demands for free speech and legal and cultural limitations on that speech. These files reveal how those decisions are made and show that Facebook does take its role as a moderator pretty seriously, even if there's often controversy around the decisions it makes.
It's a free service that we opt in to use. We accept their terms of use when we sign up. Maybe because we spend so much time on them, we assume that they have our best interests at heart. But at the end of the day, they're a business. They're making money for their shareholders by serving us advertising. So, I mean, how much can we expect them to be looking after us and society as a whole?
Other media stories that are on our radar this week. Turkish prosecutors are devising new and innovative reasons to jail journalists. The official charge that landed Murat Çalikan an 18-month prison sentence was producing propaganda for a terrorist organization. He was one of 56 people who took part in an Editor for a Day solidarity project in 2016 at a pro-Kurdish paper, Özgür Gündem, which was facing multiple government investigations at the time. 41 of the guest editors have been convicted, many on terrorism charges, but up until now, all previous jail sentences had been suspended. In this case, the court decided to imprison Çalikan for not showing enough remorse. Under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey has become one of the world's leading jailers of journalists. There are more than 100 currently behind bars. Özgür Gündem went out of print in August of 2016 and is now only available online. In the Gulf state of Qatar, where the Al Jazeera media network is based, there's been what the government says is a hack of the state news agency this past week after a fake statement was published on its website, wrongfully ascribing comments to the country's ruler. Among the issues the false report claimed were addressed by the emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, were the need to decrease tensions with Iran, the importance of understanding Hamas and Hezbollah as resistance movements, and a suggestion that the U.S. President Donald Trump would not last long in power. The false statement was picked up and critiqued by other broadcasters in the region. Al Jazeera's websites and TV channels were blocked in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Bahrain. According to Qatar's communications office, an ongoing investigation will look into this matter. The statement published has no basis whatsoever, and the authorities in the state of Qatar will hold all those involved accountable. The supposed attack on Qatar's news agency came just days after Doha claimed it had been the victim of an orchestrated media smear campaign over its alleged support for regional terrorist groups. In a graphic tweeted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Doha issued a point-by-point response to the allegations. It's been open season on journalists in Mexico, yet another has been abducted there. On May 18th, Salvador Adame Pardo, director of a television station called 6TV in the central city of Nueva Italia, was captured by 4 men, forced into an SUV, and has not been heard from since. Adame covers general news and local politics. He's been a frequent critic of government officials in the state of Michoacán. Reports of the abduction came as another Mexican reporter, Martín Méndez Pineda, gave up his bid for asylum in the United States. Pineda said he was fleeing death threats in the state of Guerrero, a danger zone for journalists where he started working last year. He has returned to Mexico but has not revealed his location out of concerns for his safety. 6 reporters have been murdered in Mexico this year alone, with the May 15th killing of Javier Valdez Cardenas, correspondent for a national newspaper, La Jornada, being the most recent. In the first half of the program, we looked at content moderation, what Facebook's policies say about the organization. Now we're going to look at the human angle, examining the role of the content moderator. Many social media users just assume that content moderation is automated, that when an inappropriate image or video is uploaded to the net, a computer removes it, whereas in reality, there are reportedly more than 150,000 content moderators worldwide working today. The job description involves sifting through images, videos, and text, assessing whether or not the content contravenes the platform's policies, and the work can take its toll. In December of last year, 2 Microsoft employees sued the company, saying that years of content moderating left them with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It can be unpleasant work, but necessary. And many social media companies based in the West now outsource it to places like the Philippines or India. But the question is, do they do that responsibly? Or do they just take advantage of the cheap labor with little consideration for the laborer? The Listening Post's Nick Muirhead now on the invisible workers scrubbing the net, deciding what you do or do not see, the content moderators.
When most people think about social media, I think the last thing they think about is what they don't see. And when we talk about content moderation, we're actually talking about that material that may either never make it to a platform or may be there for a period of time and then be rescinded. So it's kind of difficult to ask people what they think of the absence. But when I do talk to people about this topic, usually 2 things happen. The first thing is that they say, I never thought about that. And then the second thing they say is, don't computers do that?
No, for the most part, computers don't do that. Automated content moderation does exist, but it's in its early stages of development. The technology is still incapable of making complex judgments on an image or a video. You need humans for that, and a lot of them. Sanitizing your newsfeed, shielding you from the horrors posted online every day.
Obviously, huge tech companies are very, very secretive about this. They don't want you to know that there's other people who possibly could be looking at your photos, that there is people involved in the viewing of, nasty material.
The other aspect is the security part of it. So as a content moderator, you would have access to different kind of sensitive data or users' personal data, which should not be exposed to the outside world.
There's non-disclosure agreements that employees sign when they get involved in this type of work. They're broad and they're written by good lawyers in large law firms. And I think it's a very intimidating thing when you realize that you have information that needs to be imparted to the community and you've signed one of these things.
And it sort of precludes these questions that people might ask about that process. And that really gives the platform free rein to not really have to answer to the general public in terms of what is removed. The second thing is that the issue of worker well-being is largely out of sight and out of mind under this regime of secrecy. And the simple fact is that content moderation work puts workers in front of extremely difficult and disturbing material as a precondition of their job.
That's what the plaintiffs in a legal case against Microsoft contend. Henry Soto and Greg Blarrett say that they were not warned about the effect that moderating online content could have on their welfare. Their lawsuit argues that the job required them to witness horrible brutality, murder, indescribable sexual assaults, videos of humans dying, material designed to entertain the most twisted and sick-minded people in the world. Under US federal law, Microsoft has to remove and report this kind of material, so it has little choice but to employ content moderators. The company refutes the lawsuit, saying that the work is difficult, but critically important to a safer and more trusted internet, and the health and safety of its employees who do this work is its top priority. We spoke to one of the plaintiff's attorney about the effect that the work had on his client.
It resulted in disassociations at times, hallucinations at times, other times just extreme anxiety and depression. One of the big things that it does, we've talked to a lot of content moderators other than Henry and Greg in our investigation, and what we've found is that it creates these videos in their brains of these things that they've seen, and they go about their community and there are triggers like seeing children, or seeing knives in the kitchen, or seeing a computer will trigger these memories, and they will see these things in their heads over and over and over again.
Despite the fact that many of the people who do moderation are contract laborers, the 2 workers who are alleging harm in the Microsoft case were actually full-time Microsoft employees, and they continue to be to date. Both of them are actually on disability but retain their status as Microsoft employees. So while in some other cases it may be possible for a platform or firm to reasonably argue that a harmed employee wasn't actually an employee of their own, in this case Microsoft is not going to be able to make that claim.
Which explains, at least in part, why a growing number of tech companies outsource their content moderation work, offloading it to external contractors. That not only limits their legal liability, it also distances them from the antisocial side of social media. And to add another degree of separation, another kind of distancing, much of that outsourced work doesn't go to contractors in the US, it's sent offshore.
How many of you have some work experience? So everyone are freshers, this is your first job.
The Moderators is a short film released last month that follows a group of new recruits at a content moderation company in the Indian city of Bangalore. They are told that the job requires them to assess 2,000 images per hour. That's roughly 33 images per minute, more than one every 2 seconds. Then come the kinds of images that they will moderate, and as the training progresses, the examples become more unsettling, starting with nudity and going all the way through to child pornography and graphic bodily harm. Kieran Cassidy co-produced the film. He said that one of the first things that jumped out at him was just how normal, how innocuous the setting was.
We've all worked in offices before. Like, you've walked down, you've seen people come in, you put their lunchbox on their desk, their backpack on their back. We all know what an office is like. I think it's that familiarity then combined with what some people are looking at, this graphic material, that makes it quite extraordinary. So it's quite familiar, and then it's completely and utterly unique.
The financial incentives behind outsourcing lead all kinds of businesses, and not just tech companies, to take advantage of cheap labor forces overseas, and not just India's. But it's the nature of the work and the fact that content moderation is clouded in secrecy that fuels suspicions that this is a case of rich companies farming out their psychological trauma to the developing world. We put that to the CEO of the company featured in The Moderators. He admits that there are areas of the job that are difficult, but maintains that his company provides the necessary training and counseling.
When a moderator joins us, we explain them about the job profile. Along with that, we try to explain them what moderation is all about. If there is something which is bad, you don't like seeing, you can just walk down to our counselor and say, okay, I do not prefer seeing this, and maybe you can move into a different project. So we are here doing content moderation for 7 years. Until date, we have not come across even a single incident where an employee walks up to us and says that he is not comfortable with it.
The question about it is how much do we really know? Like, this film is based on a small company in Bangalore. I think there's a lot of questions about what other companies are doing. What are the conditions that these people are working on? How much the treadmill is turning? I just think within the industry itself, there's just huge question marks.
These internet service providers and tech companies make billions of dollars, but like a lot of products, there's a toxic byproduct. And that toxic byproduct needs to be managed, and the employees that work with that toxic byproduct need to be protected.
Finally, Donald Trump's first foreign trip as president. What could possibly go wrong? Trump's 8-day tour provided plenty of photo ops against exotic backgrounds, and it was a chance for the president to reset the narrative, to leave his constant squabbling with the White House press corps behind. Except the photo ops kept serving up content that was just begging to go viral. That Saudi Arabian sword dancing scene, that odd orb thing, and when Trump went to the wall in Jerusalem, the Western Wall. The pictures don't take themselves, but the stuff does write itself for the alt media that live online. We'll see you next time here at The Listening Post.
We have somebody very much in common.